As quilters, there is never a shortage of quilts to make or reasons to make them, and I have a new quilt I'm excited to share with you. This is my first Christmas quilt of 2023, and it's my Meandering Paths pattern. I love it. I'm Lea Louise from Inspired Quilting by Lea Louise, and this is a fabulous pattern for a monochromatic like this where you really focus on colors, or a sweet little baby quilt, or how about a holiday table runner? Oh my goodness, the possibilities are endless, and I want to show you how to make this. It's an easy quilt. There's a lot of pieces, you can tell, but it's made with charm squares, which makes it super simple. So let me show you how to make this. I think you're going to enjoy this quilt. All year I have been putting scraps of green and red fabrics into this little bag. It's the bundle of Christmas fabrics I got last year, and I kept the ones left over in the package, and I've just been adding it to it throughout the year as I get scraps. Like I have these layer cakes, I have some charm squares, here's a bunch of fat quarters, more layer cakes, and here's what the set actually looked like. It's very pretty, and I've pulled some for different projects and some I left here, and so now, oh, and here's some more greens on the back. I'm going to use the darkest ones. I don't want to get into the teals because the reds will stand out the best against the very dark greens. And you can see I've got a good number of them here to work with. So with that being said, I still need some more. This is a charm square quilt. I can also squeak in some layer cakes, or excuse me, some, what are those? Jelly rolls to work as well. So I primarily want to work with charm squares, so what I have here, the layer cakes, the fat quarters, I will cut into the charms, and then I have strips of fabric. Now this here is left over from last year's Kimberbell Christmas collection, and I did a bunch of small quilts and wall hangings and borders with this, and I really like these prints, and there's enough of them here that I can use. I can probably use some of these navy blues as the greens because they have the fun little Christmas motifs on there. And so as I go, I'll sort of work through that. But what I'm doing right now is my dominant color is going to be red. Green's going to be the background. So I've gone through a couple of my scrap piles, my fat quarter baskets, and because I'm trying to, whittle these down. And then once I go through and pull all the reds, I set it back. This is the last one I need to go through. Now, here's my incentive, because this is a lot of work going through all this. It's a good result because I get what I need, but more importantly, I'll get to break into this. I bought this actually it was probably the first of this year. It was after last Christmas, and I got it like 25% off. And it's a really pretty Christmas batik. It's by Kate Spain. What's it called? Felicity Batiks. And there's some wonderful prints in here. And I thought this would be a lot of fun for a quilt. But I'm not digging into this until I get all this used up. I'm really working on dwindling down my charm squares because I ended up with a ton of them after I did all that cutting a couple months ago. So right now, what I'm going to do is go through my squares. Now, I've pulled out a lot that I could have used on other quilts. So there are a few pieces in here that, or I should say most of them have been pulled. Now, something like this, there's some red in it, but I don't want the orange and the flowers. I'm really going for Christmas colors rather than particular patterns. These little guys with the Christmas, like the hot chocolate cups and the Christmas trees, that'll work out really well, and I'm okay with that. But I'm really sticking with Christmas. See, a lot of these, now this, see what I'm doing is going for burgundies and reds. Now that's a bit more orange, but this has some good burgundies and reds in it. So I'm just going through and pulling out what I like that I think I can use, And I'm also, not too many more in there. I'm also going through these strips. So when I cut my fat quarters, I cut layer cakes, charm squares, and there's always a 3 or 4 inch strip on the end. And I'm going to pull out of here what I can use. And that's really pink. I don't know. There might not be much. I think this one has been pretty much used as far as the reds go. You know, I need to order some red fabrics because either I use them all or I don't have them. I'm not sure. I have bits of them, so I'm thinking what I did have I may have used, but I can't remember a time I bought just, some red fabrics. So that'll be something that I'll look for and see what I can find on sale. My next step now is to start cutting fat quarters into charm squares, and then counting up my charm squares, my layer cakes, my jelly rolls, everything that I have, and see if I'm going to get what I need to make the size quilt I want. Again, this is scrappy. This is everything that's just been left over, and I want to use all these because when it comes time, I want to use these next, and I can't wait. So right now, let me go ahead and take care of this. I will cut, I will count, and see if I have the gazillion charm squares that I need for this quilt. I'm excited. I love this pattern, and I know it's going to be so pretty in these colors. So let me go ahead and get this done, and I'll be back in just a minute. I've cut all my charms. I'm ready to go. I've made a couple of changes. I decided to take this green out. I didn't want that to be in there. It just didn't work for me with the rest of these greens. But what I did select are these Kimberbell, what do I want to call, jelly roll strips. I like that navy background because a lot of these are very dark. These are very dark greens, kind of the dark evergreens, but there's also some kind of blue spruce colors. And I grew up in Colorado, and so I love the Colorado blue spruce. And it's just something that I kind of like to incorporate in my quilt. So that's fun. But let me kind of give you an idea. Oh, and here's the funny thing. So I needed a bunch, like almost 400 charm squares. This is going to be the Meandering Path quilt. And I was going and I'm running along. And remember I said I wasn't sure I had enough reds? Well, I didn't. And I want the red to be the primary color. So I needed some more. And COVID was a really awful time for everybody, but there is something that came out of it that I really appreciate, and that's curbside pickup. So when I realized I was out of fabric, I went to my computer at the other end of the table. I ordered a couple yards of red fabric from Joann's, and in 2 hours I can drive over there and pick it up. I didn't have to go to the store, take a number, stand in line, get it cut. Oh my goodness. That worked out great. So I have the extra reds that I needed. And these, everything for the most part is left over from last year. These are Christmas fabrics I didn't get used. And I do have some other little jelly roll pieces that I'm going to use. This is a charm square quilt, but you can kind of squeak in some jelly rolls if you need it. And there's just a great selection of fabrics. Now these charm squares, there's anywhere from maybe one a piece to a dozen. So there's an assortment of different pieces. I just went through my charm collection and pulled out what I could. And then these are my greens. I'm really happy with these. Again, I went really dark. And some of these with these lime greens, I think are going to look great. They'll be a nice contrast, but they'll really stand out against a lot of these prints. And of course, this has the lime greens in it, so that'll work really well. And these I like. They just have that almost, like I say, blue spruce look. There's a navy in the green there mixed together, and it just looks wonderful. So I am excited to put this together. I'm going to start sewing, and then I'll show you where we are. It's going to be really quick and easy. It's not a difficult quilt. There's just a lot of pieces. So let me get started, and I'll get back and show you how this works. All my charms are sewn together, and they're sewn with the background in the middle, the focal fabrics on the outside. And in my case, it's green and red. This is exciting. This is my first Christmas quilt of the season. How fun is that? So I get these sewn together and then I press them, and I just press everything in one direction. We're not worried about these seams matching up or nesting anywhere, so however you press them is going to be just fine. And it's going to fit perfectly with what we need to do. Now, this is the important part. We have to cut them. So now that we've sewn them, and we're going to cut it apart because we're going to repiece it. This way we have the charm squares sewn sets up the color pattern that we want. And then by cutting this, now we're going to create a really fun design. Now, this measures 14 inches. And of course, it's a charm square, so this is 5. And I've cut it in half, but I also need to cut it in half this way. And a lot of times when I'm doing a pattern that has this square like this, the smaller square that I'm going to cut in half, I'll be particular fussy about making sure it's exactly right, but you don't have to on this because it doesn't match up to anything. The idea is just that that square is there. So I put my ruler on 7 inches, right smack in the middle, and it's going to come out pretty darn even. And that's okay, even if it's just the littlest bit off, because it's still going to work. But I do need to show you what doesn't work. Don't try doing it this way, where you have your background on the end and your focals on both on one side. That's not going to work at all. So this is going to take a little bit of repair work, but I'll get it ready. So now once all these are sewn, once all these are cut, then I'm going to start putting my blocks together. And what I'll do is the basic pattern is, and this is for everything that we're going to make. So let's say we'll get some fun prints like this. We've got a dark one, and we'll put a dark one here. So lay out your fabrics however you like them. And I try to get a mix where one pile will have some, like multicolors in it, and one's maybe lighter and the other's darker. You just want to get some contrast in here. And I'm going to go ahead and just start sewing. And as my pile runs down, I'll replenish it with something else, because remember, I had almost 400, it was over 350 charm squares. It's the equivalent of about 9 charm packs. So that's a bunch. And so I have plenty to work with, and I'm just going to sew until I get, 100 and I forget how many of these blocks. And then I can put my quilt together. But this is a great way to put a quilt together, pieced easily with charm squares, with minimal measuring or fussing. And you just sew this together and then wait till you see how the pattern lays out. And I get excited when I can make it into a 4-patch. So that's going to make it go even quicker. So let me go ahead and get this together, and I'll show you how it's all going to work. We're getting close now. And here I have some finished blocks. So with my 3 strips with the alternating greens going on each other side, this is what I have. And I have a couple different variations. And you'll notice the green changes throughout. And that works out really well. And I want to make sure that I stay consistent with this pattern, that I have 2 on one side and 1 here, because that way we're going to get these to line up. And this is where we're creating a secondary pattern, which is always a lot of fun. Now, the other thing that I do is I'm going to put these into a 4-patch. I like putting my blocks in a 4-patch when I have lots of small blocks. And the reason I do that is this quilt is going to have 12 of these blocks in each direction. And if I were to do the web piecing, that's a lot of loose pieces coming and going. And invariably along the way, I'm going to miss a row, and then I throw my pattern off, and it makes me a little crazy. So what I do instead is I put my pattern, my blocks, into a 4-patch. And by doing this, I can sew a larger block, and then instead of putting 12 across, I'm just putting 6 across, and that goes so much easier for me. So that's one thing that I want to show you, because why this is important is how you do your pressing. Once I get my blocks all made, I have all my little strips sewn together into a block like this. I divide it into 4 groups. And sometimes it's by color, sometimes it's, any variable of different things. But predominantly, I'd say it's probably color, because I want to have dark in some of them, and I want to have light, I want to have patterns, and I want a lot going on throughout the block. And I don't want one block to have just all red and another block to have all the mixture of what's going on. So I lay out my 4-patch like this, and I stack all my blocks in place. Now, the other thing I do is I'm going to sew this 4-patch together, obviously, but it's so much easier to sew together if my seams are pressed so that I can nest them. So what I do here is I will take these 2 blocks and press the seams down. You see how those are going down towards the bottom. Now these I'm going to press going up. And the reason this works so well is when I put these 2 together, look at how nicely those seams are going to nest. These go down, these go up, and it's so easy to sew. That just makes it quicker for sewing, but also because I'm taking this extra step of pressing everything, my blocks are going to go together nicely and look terrific. Sometimes if you're not pressing along the way, when you have multiple seams like this, your fabric can get a bit, almost like it's bunched up. But by giving it a good press and you're smoothing everything out, then you're in great shape. Now, I'm showing you this in a 4-patch. Essentially, all you have to do is make a bunch of these. And you'll sew these 2 together, and then you can sew these 2 together. All of them in one fell swoop, whatever works for you. Once all my blocks are sewn into pairs like this, I'm going to press them. But what I want to make sure is that I press everything in the same direction. So you'll notice this gets pressed to that side, the double versus the single. Choose a way that works for you and a way you can remember. I just do it that way because I can remember double versus single. But then what happens when we put these 2 together is we lose our pattern. So this is what I love about this. All these blocks are made exactly the same, just turn one the other way, and now you have your pattern. And it's pressed so that you're going to get your nesting seam. It's just such a time saver. And now I have a 4-patch, so my 12 across, I'm only going to need 6 of these instead of 12 of these little ones. And that's a whole lot easier to manage because I can also go in and press this, pre-press it, so that when I'm putting things together, it just is going to be easier to press at the final step. And those sorts of things are important to me because when I get down to the end of the quilt, the last thing I want to do is spend a couple hours trying to press it all and figuring out which is supposed to go in what direction. So if I do it as I go, I get a better looking block because everything lays nice and it lines up. So this is really a fun way to put your quilt together. And you can do this with any kind of a block. I just tend to do it with this because these are on the smaller size and making them bigger makes it more manageable. Okay, now let's take a look at how the quilt is coming. Once these are all taken care of, I'm going to start piecing these together into rows and wait till you see how that looks. Look how wonderful these colors are coming together. The green is just perfect in that background. These dark greens really go into the background and it gives these red prints a far more attention-getting position in the quilt. They really stand out more and I love how it's coming together. And, you know, we've got some stripes and some geometric prints and just some random batiks and dots, and there's just all kinds of things in here. And what I love is, again, putting it together with the blocks. And you can see that these are chain pieced. And I have one more set I need to do over here. But I want to show you how the other half looks that's already put together. Now this quilt is measuring, I think it's going to be about, let's see, 72 to 75 inches. I'm not exactly sure. But it's just a lot of fun. And these ended up being, because I had the amount of these equal to one pile that I was sewing together, I just put them all on one side. And I kind of like it. It kind of creates this regular pattern amongst all the other colors going every which way. So it's kind of fun. It's a little different. And one thing to think about, if you use a directional print like this, decide which direction you want them to go, sideways or vertical, and whether or not you want them all to go in the same direction or mix it up, because that will make a difference. But you know what's really special are these little blue pieces. I didn't have a lot of them, but don't those just look great in there mixed in with the greens? You know, they're kind of scattered throughout. I think it's wonderful. This quilt is going to look gorgeous when it's finished, and I'm really close. So let me go ahead and work on this and get the rest of the seams finished, and I'm going to show you what this quilt looks like. It's a beauty. Just look at how pretty this quilt is. All those gorgeous colors are so bright and festive. I think they are gorgeous. And this is such an easy quilt. Like I said, it takes some time because there's a lot of pieces, a lot of cutting, but there's nothing difficult about it. It's just a lot of fun. And whether you make the little ones, the big ones, you're going to enjoy this quilt. I hope you want to check it out. There's a link below if you're interested. But do enjoy making some holiday quilts this year. It's always a great time and everybody loves it. Thank you for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I hope you have some fun quilting ahead of you this week.